It's really interesting because, at least in my cult experience, there was a lot of repression of emotion. Like you're not allowed to be angry. Like you're not allowed to, like you just like need to sort of stay in line, right? Anger is a really powerful emotion because emotions like shame keep us stuck. And then as soon as we get angry, we start feeling like we want to do something about it. Like there's an action behind anger.
Mm.
So that's why a lot of people who are trying to control us or in a cult environment or a bad relationship or whatever will shut down anger because like that's when you start making a difference. That's when you start making changes. So in feeling that anger, um, that was really, shut down growing up. And so even when I knew that I had been lied to, I didn't feel angry yet. Like I was just confused. I just wanted to understand. I was like, I know this isn't true. Please tell me why you told me this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today we have a special guest. She is not only a cult survivor, but she is a thriving survivor and is ready to share her transformation as well as how she is helping the world with a app that she is currently working on. Today, I would like to introduce the audience to my special guest, Lydia Knight. Lydia, thank you for being on the podcast. How are you doing today?
So good, Ryan. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you on the podcast. And to get us started, can you share with us a bit about your backstory?
Yeah, I have a wild backstory, so happy to share. And it's a very deep belief that I hold that some of our darkest, most challenging experiences in life can turn into some of our most inspiring gifts that we share with the world. And so I frame the story, the backstory in that way because, some of the hardest things can turn into some of the most beautiful things that we have to offer, which has absolutely been my story. And I've seen that thousands of times. So I had a bizarre childhood. My grandmother was a cult leader. And so I grew up in a cult within the Mormon church. So I have a long Mormon history on, the white side of my family. And then my grandmother was a cult leader. And that essentially happened because my mother started getting, I'll say in quotes, revelations from God about these very bizarre things that had happened to my brother and I. So my grandmother would sit me down on the couch next to her and she would call a friend and she would tell them all of these details of the horrors that had happened to me. So she would be telling her friend that my spine had been broken, that I had been raped, gang raped over and over and over, that there were Satan worshipers that had put me on a pentagram and put needles in my eyes and like reprogram my brain so that I could hear a trigger at any time and then be taken over by the power of Satan, like all these very like dark, scary things. And I would be right next to her listening to all of this. And then she would hang up with that friend. And then she would call the next friend and she would tell the whole story over again. So, Ryan, I would hear this sometimes hours on end during my childhood. And I would just, be in tears. And I would say, like, why do you have to tell that to people? Like, I don't want people to know what's happened to me. And, my grandmother would tell me that we need people to go without food or water to fast as a strong prayer, because if not, then the Satan worshipers will come back and they will kill our whole family and that we'll lose the protection of God. So my grandmother was recruiting people for this cult with this story, telling them that, we're counting on you to do what I say to protect these children. And so I was terrified. Like, I heard a little thing the other day of like, what are the top 5 words that describe your childhood? And one of those for me was like terror. Like I was really scared every day of my life because I was told if I ever did anything wrong, if I ever didn't obey perfectly, then my family would be killed. We would be found by these Satan worshipers. So that was the context that I grew up in, the story that I believed and who I believed myself to be. I believed myself to be someone that had been through all of this trauma. And it is so impactful, the stories that we believe about ourselves, because even though that didn't actually happen and I found that out as an adult, it's still, when you live in a world where that's your story, that's your reality.
When you think of childhood, people might think innocence, happiest days of my life, good memory, or they'll say something like, I remember my mom's cooking something that's more brighter. But the word that you use was terror. Um, well, you've already shared how it was being in that room as she was sharing those stories. Uh, what happened as you continued growing up?
So I believed this story up until I was an adult and had my own child. I like physically distanced myself, like, I was living on my own with my family, and but the stories that we tell ourselves are so strong that I couldn't live a normal life or a life outside of fear, even though I had some more independence because my nervous system was just so used to making decisions from fear and not being seen and always being safe and always feeling like I was in danger. And so it's so important to realize that even if we change our physical circumstances around us, the stories and the emotions that we still have from where we came from still really run the show in a lot of our decision making. So, freedom is not just about changing our circumstances. Freedom is about changing really from the inside out our story and how we feel. So, into my adult years, that story still controlled me. I would, move in the middle of the night, growing up, like if we got a suspicious call or whatever, we were always looking for the cult might find us. I would move in the middle of the night. My friends had no idea where I went, like just middle of the school year. They would just never hear from me again, and I would disappear. So I was extremely isolated, and I was in this echo chamber. It was incredible to me that growing up, no one, not one adult, ever questioned what was happening. My grandmother was so charismatic and so believable that I have no memories of anyone ever pushing back. People just believed it, which is wild to see how when we get in these echo chambers where everyone's telling the same story, nothing gets challenged.
And why do you think it is, even for the adults in religious communities or cults, that someone can be charismatic and the rest don't have the audacity, a healthy audacity to challenge those crazy statements?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing to look at.
Mhm.
I think, especially with high control religions like Mormonism, part of that is the value is really in obedience. It's about following. It's about being part of someone else's story. It's frowned on. It's downright sinful to be thinking of challenging what
Mhm.
you've been told because it's about giving up what you feel is truth to a higher authority that's telling you what truth is. So when you're in a high control religion like that, it's a very easy, slippery slope to a cult mentality because you're sort of already in that. But then if you have someone that feels like they have more authority than you, my grandmother was so incredibly convincing that people got wrapped up in her story so easily, and they were already in a culture where that's what you do is you default your questions to someone else's authority. So I think the
Uh,
culture has a lot to do with it.
so if an adult did question or did raise concerns because of that culture of obedience and kind of just falling in line, would they have been shamed, perhaps, or ridiculed?
Yeah, I mean there would be disappointment. It would be, I mean, in the Mormon church, it's about eternity, right? So it's not just like your decisions have eternal consequences. So if you're sinning, if you're doing something, wrong, that is changing the rest of eternity for you and everyone that you love. So the stakes are very high. So there was the Mormon church where the stakes are very high of ever being disobedient. And then there was the cult that I was in where the stakes were really, really high, as in if I ever wasn't obedient, then my family would be killed. So when you have these really high stakes, then it just makes obedience seem like such an obvious thing. Like, why would you challenge that? Like the stakes are literally life or death.
And so this community, this cult within the Mormon church, was it a big community, like worldwide, or was it just like in a local area?
Yeah, so it was smaller. It was probably hundreds of people, not like thousands of people. And so yeah, cults have come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So it wasn't one that like, has a name or there's been a documentary about, especially because in a cult, no one ever calls it a cult. We just call it like, oh, well, we know secret things that other people don't know. And so there was never like a name for it. But then looking back and being an adult and really having deprogrammed from so many different cultures and structures that were oppressive, you look back and you're like, oh, I grew up in a cult. Like that's what was happening. And language is really powerful. Like it's powerful to look at what's happened to us and have a language for describing that. It lets us know we're not alone, and it also lets us know that like our experience is valid. Like there's a word for that.
And you just said right now that feeling of being alone, that's a feeling that I went through as a cult member. Thank goodness I'm no longer in that environment. But when you were on your journey, did you have those feelings? Even though you're in the community, even though you're in the cult, did you ever feel that you were kind of alone?
Absolutely. I think it's a strange sort of paradox because in a cult, there's this belonging, like that you have something that's special that no one else has. You have these secrets, you have this community, you have like this tight-knit belonging, but it doesn't feel like a satisfying belonging. It feels like a I'm nothing without this. You sort of give away all of your power. So it's not an empowered belonging. And there is really also, aside with that sort of twisted belonging, is a feeling of really, really being alone because you're so isolated when you're in a cult like experience. Like, because I couldn't tell my friends about what we believed. And, we would move in the middle of the night and I would, never be able to keep other relationships. And it was always a dangerous thing where I could never tell anyone my phone number, my real name, because then my family might be killed by these Satan worshipers that would find us. So part of being in a cult is it's very isolating. So it's this strange belonging, but also very isolating and alone.
And was there like a phase or a moment where you felt or you recognized that you didn't belong? And I ask this in light of my own cult experience because for the longest time I felt like, and the way you worded this is just spot on. I felt like I was belonging to a group, but like the power is in the group. I mean, I don't have any potential for anything because if I'm doing anything on my own, that's considered as like selfishness or so. Oh, so for me, it's my experience was I only belonged in the group and I felt good. But when I started finding, I guess, my own empowerment, I started seeing that belonging kind of falling apart. And I was still physically there, but it's just like it started melting away. And so in that light, like for you, like what was it that helped you to see that yes, although you were there, you didn't really belong?
Yeah. I think there's this really profound transition of energy that a lot of us will go through when we're losing the cult that we're in, but we're like finding ourselves,
Yes.
is there becomes more of a priority for truth than belonging. So I, as an adult, was like, you know what? I know there are all of these boxes of evidence that prove all of these horrific things have happened to me, and I believe you, but I want to see them for myself. And I wasn't even questioning. Like I never thought that like I was being lied to. That seemed like an insane thing to tell someone if it wasn't true. I just simply wanted to see it for myself. And as you can imagine, that got absolutely shut down. But it was a priority of like, I want to know for myself, even if there's risk to myself to know, I want to know for myself what happens. Like what happened, I want to know the truth. And I'm prioritizing that even if it's going to rock the boat. Because asking for truth, asking for that empowerment of I want to know for myself is very threatening to a high control structure like a cult. But the priority became truth.
So you were seeking the truth, and in that exploration, it's sad how cults how they treat members. I mean, they could have been more real with you.
Absolutely, but at the loss of me, right? Because
Mm.
if you have a false story and you have someone that wants to know the truth about it, it breaks down your story very quickly. So much of that culture is not questioning because false stories just don't hold up with questioning. So that's always got to be the priority is like align with the story.
Well, yeah, the jig is up once you start uncovering the truth.
Yeah.
And for you, as you were beginning to open your mind to something that was perhaps forbidden, questioning, or not even really questioning, but just having that curiosity for the truth, what helped you keep going? Because sometimes with the shame and the guilt, people stop and default back into their old ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a straight line. Like I was essentially kidnapped away from my dad when I was about 2 years old. I was raised in this cult. I was told my dad was the leader of these Satan worshipers that had hurt me. Like I always was told if I ever saw my dad, I would be instantly killed. And in that, even when I knew the truth, even though I knew at one point when I had found enough truth that my dad was not a horrible Satan worshiping, child abusing person. My dad was a father that has been looking for his kids for 25 years. It still took me years to reach out and get in touch with my dad. So it's not this straight line where it's like as soon as you know the truth, sometimes we need to have some time to process and normalize the truth. Sometimes we need time and, you know, really taking action and baby steps towards something before we feel safe enough to take that next step. And, that's okay. But I don't even know what it was. Like Ryan, like there was some fire within me where I just kept on taking steps forward. I think I have a real passion for freedom like that. We've given thousands of women freedom in their lives. And like, I don't know what lights me up more than seeing someone get free. So there was something about my own journey where I wanted freedom and I kept on walking in that direction.
During your journey, did you have any help?
Yes, I'm gonna say that as like a question because I did feel so alone in what I was doing. But at that point, being an adult, it was really helpful to get out of the cult and go to college. I wasn't, I only went to like before high school, I only went to school like half of the years, right? I was homeschooled. I'll put that in quotes because I was just like no schooled. It was just like cult all day school. So I really developed this fire in my high school years to be like, I want my high school diploma. I want to go to college. And even though I went to BYU, Mormon owned university. So you're not getting like a big view of the world. You're still getting a very like narrow view of the world. But even with that, it was really helpful to start getting other perspectives, to start meeting people that I felt trust with and can open up a little bit with. So the biggest thing that was helpful is when I got brave enough to start sharing my story a little bit. And when I did, to see the response of other people where they were confused or they were shocked or they're like, well, how do you know? Right. So, like, they were asking all these questions that I had never asked and no one had ever around me asked. So, a lot of our stories stay the same in silence. So I would say it was the help and support of people's response in the few instances that I could share and had the courage to at that point that was the most helpful.
Was there a person that really stood out who really made it easy for you to trust and get these personal truths off of your chest? Like, was there a friend, a counselor, anything like that?
I wouldn't say that there was a particular person. I would say there was like more of a feeling that was building in me of like, I really need to know. And it was like putting pieces together. But I would say the person that made the biggest impact is, I mean, when I finally met my dad, because I was so terrified of him my whole life. And I remember driving to see him for the first time as an adult and my daughter was in the back seat and she was like a toddler and making little sounds and I was seeing the trees go by and I remember just soaking it up because I like knew I was going to die. Like everything and we just like knew like this is my last day to live, so I'm just going to soak this up because that's what my body, my nervous system had felt. And Ryan, the moment I saw my dad, the moment I saw him in real life, all of the fear melted away. All of those old stories melted away. And I was like, there was a knowing from actually being in his presence. Isolation is such a huge thing because when we like are there with people in front of us and we can feel their energy and know who they are, it's really hard to believe lies that other people have told us when we're in that human space. I would say meeting my dad was the biggest transformative thing where like people supporting me in this change because like I knew who he really was once I saw him.
So you were fed a lie for your whole life that these atrocious things, terrible things were done at the hand of your father. Now you're facing that lie and you got to meet your father. That all melts away. But my question for you now is, now that that's melted away, what was what were your thoughts and emotions now towards the cult?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, at least in my cult experience, there was a lot of repression of emotion. Like you're not allowed to be angry. Like you're not allowed to, like you just like need to sort of stay in line, right? Anger is a really powerful emotion because emotions like shame keep us stuck. And then as soon as we get angry, we start feeling like we want to do something about it. Like there's an action behind anger.
Mm.
So that's why a lot of people who are trying to control us or in a cult environment or a bad relationship or whatever will shut down anger because like that's when you start making a difference. That's when you start making changes. So in feeling that anger, um, that was really, shut down growing up. And so even when I knew that I had been lied to, I didn't feel angry yet. Like I was just confused. I just wanted to understand. I was like, I know this isn't true. Please tell me why you told me this. And it took a while to get in touch with the anger. And then once I did, I still really tried. I mean, I still, have a brother that's in that cult, that has been in a basement room for 20 years. I still fought so much to try to help the people that had lied to me, but I still wanted to help out. So it's like phases, right?
Mhm.
So I would say that there was confusion and then there was anger and then there was this sort of trying so hard to still keep relationships with these people because they're like the only people that shared my childhood memories. And there was an acceptance of like these people don't belong in my life and that's okay. But it was a process.
So here's a question which I've also asked myself because we're talking about the emotions of being confused and anger and uh, well, my question is, during all of this, how did you see love for yourself? Like when you were in the cult, when you met your father, what was that like?
Yeah, there's a confusion, at least for me in a cult environment, where love for yourself gets replaced by loyalty, where it's not about you, it's about sort of giving away yourself to the cult. And so getting out of that, self-love is such an important part of that healing process. It's the love for myself is more important to the loyalty of the people that hurt me. My love for myself is going to dictate the next steps that I take instead of trying to do things right. The love for myself means I'm going to do this imperfectly and in a messy way, but I love myself enough. There's almost this feeling of a future version of you that loves yourself so deeply. It's like pulling you forward. I don't know if you felt that, Ryan, but there's almost like this future you that you can get in touch with that's like keeps on loving you forward. That was part of my experience.
Well, I've never thought about it that way, but I'm going to really be thinking about that future self because I think even if yes, I'll think about that. So now we've heard a bit of your backstory, your journey about meeting your father. Um, the transformation. Where did that begin for you?
Whew, all right. First, it started with survival, honestly. I had left the cult physically and to my horror realized that just leaving wasn't enough. I was still so dictated by that fear. Even knowing the story wasn't true, I was still living like it was in the ways that I was afraid, in the ways I was holding myself back. And so what I did was I was studying neuroscience at the time, and I developed a set of like 5 neuroscience principles that I thought was just for myself. I'm like, this is just how Lydia is going to survive, right? So out of survival, I developed this methodology to deprogram myself from the fear of the cult that I grew up in. And it worked really, really well. Like I was so glad that it did. It's wild that I was able to put those things together, but that system worked so well for me that I could go on and like get married and have a daughter and graduate summa cum laude and build a business and like do all these things that a lot of it is overcoming fear. Like being a business owner, so much of it is being able to overcome fear because like so much growth is about that. And so because I was able to overcome that fear, it worked so incredibly well. And then I developed a life-threatening eating disorder, and it just continued to get worse and worse. I tried everything. And my career at the time was I was a business coach for health coaches. So I was all about this image of health. And then I was binge eating out of control and like hurting myself. And I was just maddened and confused. And I had done so much to get out of a cult. And then I was like, and this is the thing that's going to take me out. Like I was so angry about it. And one day I was just like collapsed, sobbing in my closet. And I had this moment of relief where I realized that I could end my life and that was a way out. And in that moment of just surrender and sadness, it occurred to me for the first time. I wondered, could I deprogram from an eating disorder like I deprogrammed from the cult that I grew up in? And after years of trying everything and everything making it worse, I tried my own homemade thing that I'd done for my own survival, and it worked so well. In 1 week, I was completely done with my eating disorder. I've been free ever since. And I made this big pivot in my life to our first flagship program was helping people to end eating disorders. So we've helped over 1,000 women to end their eating disorders. And then we started seeing those principles were so effective for deprogramming from, fear of success and people pleasing and feeling not good enough. And people were having extremely quick success in their lives because they knew how to deprogram from these things. I had no idea that those principles were more for than just my survival. And so in that process, it was a wild couple of years. I left the cult, I left the Mormon church, I left an abusive marriage, I ended my eating disorder, I started a business. A lot of stuff happened and it was incredible, but it was a wild ride. But when you have the tools that create freedom in your life, things happen quickly. It can be intense, but it's in the right direction.
My next question is for it's like a parallel for both the cult and uh, for you on your journey to getting your health in order. So my question is like for these two, because we're talking about freedom, what are some things that you had to break in terms of the cult and for you to excel with your health?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting parallel. And I think this is even more universal than those two things. So, what happens is that everything that we feel, everything that we do is because of a cascade of thoughts that leads to that. So, we have this cascade of thoughts and then we do the thing. And we can look back and be like, why did I do that again? I told myself I'd never do that again. Like, this is why we oftentimes are in these yo yo cycles with all sorts of things in our lives, right? But what happens is that we oftentimes first try to use willpower. Like, I'm going to try to make myself do something else. I'm going to try to make myself do it even though I'm scared. I'm going to try to make myself not do it even though I feel like doing it. And then we have this cycle of failure because willpower just doesn't work. What does work is that if you look at the thoughts that lead to the action and you interrupt that cascade of thoughts before you ever get to the action, the desire or the thing that you would have regretted, like that just melts away. Like you don't want to do it anymore. There's nothing as sustainable as doing what you want. So when you actually change your desires to be aligned with your highest life and your most incredible goals, like that's what makes all the difference. So for instance, with my binge eating, it wasn't that I was fighting the urge to binge eat. It was that I was interrupting the habits of thought that were leading to it. So I didn't want to binge eat anymore. And it was as simple as that. Like with the fear from the cult that I came from, it wasn't that I was trying to be so afraid and do it anyway. It was that I actually interrupted the thought patterns that led to that fear. So I wasn't afraid anymore. So it's really going upstream with our process that makes all of the difference and keeps us out of this yo-yo cycle where we just willpower ourselves for a while and then go right back to where we were at and feel like a failure.
So you started applying this on yourself and it worked. You said in 1 week, it really showed success. Uh, Now, how did you start, or how did you get the idea to help other people? Because I mean, with something so great, you want to keep it to yourself. But here you are being just so generous and helping others to get their life back.
So I think that I think it's a really natural thing that when we have something that changes our life so much, we really want that for other people. Like, because we know how awful it is to be in a cult. We know how awful it is to whatever our personal experience is. And so like when you get free, like you want that freedom for other people. But like the rest of the story, what really happened was I was a health coach. I was coaching like 500 other coaches as a business coach for their whole health coaching practice. Like there was like a big group of people that were looking to me to be healthy. And I wasn't. My eating disorder was a secret. I was like getting on shows and talking about healthy things and then going home and binging. Like there was this horrible imposter syndrome. There was this horrible shame around it. And there was a point, I think it's a theme here, Ryan, where it's like I cared more about truth than I did belonging. And it was like a national call where people were calling in to get healthy tips from Coach Lydia. Uh, Instead of giving them healthy tips, I was just honest. And I didn't have a solution. Like I still hadn't fixed my eating disorder. I didn't know if I ever would, but I just couldn't hide anymore. So I just told people what was happening, that I wasn't who they thought that I was. And I got off of that call and I cried myself to sleep. And I knew I had committed career suicide. And because nobody wants a health coach that is out of control with their health, like I didn't know what I was going to do. I was terrified, but I told the truth. And I woke up the next morning to hundreds of messages, which really scared me at first because I thought they were just messages of people being so mad that I had deceived them and kept this a secret. And I started opening the messages, and Ryan, over and over, it was me too, me too. I've been hiding this. I'm binging as well. I thought I was alone. I've never heard anyone else describe my experience like you did. And so I realized I wasn't alone. And it was like in a couple of weeks, we had a group of like 2,000 people that were all reaching out and being like, I'm struggling with this too. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a problem that I was just dealing with. It was a problem that all of these people that I cared about were dealing with. So it wasn't just finding a solution for me. It was like, let's figure this out. And it was in that pressure and in that freak out of like, how do we solve this problem, that I got to that low point, collapsed in my closet, and also the high point of like, I wonder if this thing would work. And so I got to experience that freedom for myself, but then I had thousands of people that I got to refine those principles with, because I'm like, well, it worked for me. Would it work for you? And you've been doing this for, 35 years. And would it still work for you? And for you, it's just overeating. And for you, it's bulimia. And like, it worked, it worked, it worked, it worked. And so it was so beautiful to see this freedom, but then also know how powerful these principles are. And so it's just like when you keep on telling the truth and you keep on being honest, phenomenal things happen.
Which was more terrifying for you? Was it leaving the cult, or was it being on that call and kind of outing yourself out and just telling the truth that you had this eating struggles?
Definitely being honest about my eating disorder. That was the scariest thing I'd done to that point in my life. The wild thing about that is like you build your capacity for doing scary things. So it's like I've done way scarier things since then. Um, but at that point, it was the biggest thing. I think um, it just felt like leaving the cult. It was, I know the truth and I'm walking toward the truth. And with being honest about my eating disorder, it was being honest about my eating disorder with no solution. I would have loved to be like, this is where I struggled and here's the answer. But I didn't. I didn't know if I would ever have the answer. I was just being honest. And I think that's what was so scary because all it was honesty. There wasn't like this beautiful rest of the story. I was in the middle of the story. And I think that's the hardest time to share is when we're in the middle of it.
So when you had that honesty and you were really just getting the truth, getting at the heart of the truth, I mean, geez, it sounds like there was just this transformation. Yes, it was scary, but just, I mean, here you are today and sharing all about it. I mean, like, I'm speechless.
Well, I appreciate that acknowledgement. I'm really proud of the choices that I've made because stepping into the dark has helped so many other people to do the same. Like it's such a beautiful thing to see someone in the middle of their story and to put out your hand and be like, I know exactly how that feels, but I'm on the other side and I know what happens when you keep on doing this practice and I see you free and I know how to get you there. And to be able to like lead them to that place is so wonderful. And it as you get in this pattern in life of continuing to do courageous things and helping others, it's this really beautiful continual motivation where it's like, all right, I know how this goes. This feels really scary, but remember last time I did this and I didn't only survive it, like I've helped other people because of it. So it's a hopeful thing if you can keep on leaning in.
And are you still a health coach today?
So I coach on health. One thing that I realized that was a really important thing that everyone needs to know is that the number one cause of eating disorders, and by the way, eating disorders impact 3 out of 4 women. 75% of women are struggling with disordered eating. It's extremely common. The number one cause of eating disorders is restrictive dieting. And so many women are on diets. Diets cause eating disorders. And so being a health coach, I called it a health coach, but what I was a weight loss coach. And restrictive dieting gave me my eating disorder. And so I had a huge career pivot. So yes, I coach on health, but I coach on like real health. I coach on habits and changing who we are and what we do. I don't coach on weight loss because that is a yo-yo cycle where it teaches our bodies to be in a place where they feel unsafe and they end up gaining more weight long term and it destroys our health. So I'll say yes, but in a
Okay.
very different way than I used to.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that like being on a health coach or a person who's on a health journey, it's not about or what my understanding is it's not only about counting the calories, but it's also just being aware of one's habits and how one is living life. Am I correct or am I getting a little bit mixed?
Oh, no, absolutely. But it's about not counting the calories.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
about
good.
actually creating the brain of a healthy person. Like what I really coach on is neuroscience principles. Because when you have thought patterns of a healthy person, then you are in integrity with that identity and you do healthy things and you are healthy.
Okay.
And when you go into this structure of, I'm out of control, I have to count calories and I have to restrict all this stuff, you might have some temporary changes in your body. You'll lose some muscle, you'll lose some pounds, you'll gain it all back plus some. It'll be worse and worse and worse because you're in this identity of, I'm an unhealthy person that has to do drastic things to become healthy versus, I am a healthy person, so I'm going to do healthy things and then you have health.
Okay, so not counting calories, but instead having healthy thoughts, and with these healthy thoughts, I guess the result will be healthy habits, and with healthy habits comes healthy living, right?
Yeah. There you go.
All right, I'm learning something new. All right, good. I love it because I've been on my own journey. It's been a struggle, especially after leaving the cult, because there we had a lot of restrictive dieting, and then
Hmm.
coming out, it's just a, night and day. And it's been 10 years, but it's still just trying to find, where do I belong? Like, I mean, there are parts of me that, because I had experienced the restrictive dieting for over a decade, there are days or maybe weeks or months where I just want to binge eat and eat everything. And then there's other days when I want to be, oh man, I was a lot skinnier then. I'm going to restrict my dieting. And then, like you said, there's that yo-yo, just going back and forth. But I really admire that this new approach of, and it's probably not a new approach, but the approach that you're bringing to me of just having a healthy mindset, healthy mind, healthy body.
There you go. It's that identity. And that totally makes sense. We talk about that a healing journey is in the shape of a pendulum, where you're on one side and you're off of balance and you're restricting, right? And then when you let go of that, you swing over to the other side. And that's actually really important. That's when the anger happens. That's when the contrast happens. Oh, I'm not like that anymore. That's when you go from restriction to binging, because like that's literally what your body wants to do to survive if it's felt in starvation, right? But when we say, oh no, this is wrong, this isn't okay, I shouldn't feel this way, then we swing back to the other side and we get into that yo-yo cycle. What the healing journey is about is you swing over to one side, you get the contrast, you get the knowledge, you get the identity of deciding who you want to be, and then you come back to center. That's why our organization is called the She Center, because it's about coming to that effortless, centered place where we're doing what serves us best, where we're doing what's sustainable, where we're doing what's authentic to us, and we're not reacting to one thing or the other. We're actually truly who we are.
And I love how you introduce what is this?
Yeah, the She Center.
The
Yeah.
She Center. Can you tell us a bit more? Is it like a website? Is it a place? Is it actual center building, or what is it?
Yeah, oh, that's great. It can have multiple meetings, but I'm the founder and CEO of the She Center, and for we've coached 9,000 leaders since 2010. We started with ending eating disorders. We found those neuroscience principles were incredible for leadership and creating success in our lives, and being done with old stories and writing the new stories we choose in our lives. So we've been supporting women and making a better world for women, which is a better world for everyone, for a long time. And so the She Center could be a physical place, like we do events every so often, but it's really about having a community all over the world. And our focus right now is we have an app coming out. It's going to be the She Center app, and it's about creating communities of women all over the world who have those neuroscience principles to be able to support them in their own journey. And we're also coming together in community to support each other. So that's been the evolution of the She Center.
And so the name of the app will be the She app, or what is it called? Well,
The She Center app. So it's the same as our name. So the She Center. Yeah.
okay. And for those in the audience who may be very interested, when can they start downloading this app onto their devices?
Yes. So it'll be soon, if not already, when you're listening to this episode. So go and check the App Store, see if it's there. If not, follow us on social media. We're the She Center. Everywhere you probably have social media, unless you're very niche in your social media, and you can find us there, and then see when we announce it. But it's very soon. We've been working on it for the last couple of years. I've really changed my philosophy, where at first we were teaching these neuroscience principles that are so effective to, leaders all over the world, U.S. Army and leaders at Disney and Adobe and National Geographic. And our concept really was give these powerful principles to leaders and make a big impact, because these are the leaders. And we're so proud of the work that we've done. We're so proud of our leaders. Amazing things have happened, but we've really shifted our philosophy to, we believe that instead of this just being for at executive level and, big investments, then we want this to be available and free to every woman in the world, and allies of women. And so it's going to be out there and free. And it's been part of my journey of deprogramming from capitalism, going from, building a top 2% in the world woman-owned company to not paying myself for the last couple of years and giving the gift of what I would have been paid to developing this app as a gift for the world. And that feels like the story I'm in the middle of right now, Ryan, where it's like, whew, that feels brave, but it feels true. And so we're doing it.
Beautiful. No, I'm really I'm hearing how you are you've entered a place in your life where you are not afraid to make a positive impact. You are not afraid to inspire people. You are not afraid to be you. And it sounds like you're really impacting people in a positive way to really find their own power and to grow. But my question for you is, with all the work that you're doing and you're impacting others, how has the work that you've done impacted you?
Oh, I love that question. It's really given me the knowing that I can use the same principles that we teach to become the person that I need to be for the world that we're creating. I am so grateful for what I've gotten to build and be a part of because it's stretched me in a way that I wouldn't if I was just on my own. Like we transform for the causes that we're part of, so much more than, even the our own lives. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's also transformed me in a way where I have such a belief in women and I have such a belief in freedom and that we don't need to control what's happening. Like we give our best and then people can do with their freedom whatever they want. And to just like give our best to the world. Like I'm so, so grateful for what it's meant for me personally and my own freedom. That's what I wanted. And I have it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing just so much about your backstory, and all of it, all the amazing things that you're doing. But now I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, Lydia, what is your truth that heals?
Ooh, I'm going to share a truth that in coaching thousands of clients personally over the years has resonated with so, so many of them. And when you like really get it, like it's a big deal. And a lot of us, especially women, are taught to not believe this. So this is the truth that what is best for you is also best for everyone else who belongs in your life. To put yourself first, to take care of you, like that's valuable, really, really valuable. It's not selfish. It's your truth. What's best for you is best for everyone that belongs in your world.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for sharing your truth that heals and for sharing your journey. And again, just to refresh the audience about the app, what is the name of the app again?
The She Center app.
All right, audience. So go and stay tuned for the She Centered app. Hopefully, by the time that this episode is published, maybe it'll be out. And if not, just stay tuned and I'll give you updates. Also, check out there's a website, right?
Yes, theshecenter.com. So all you need to remember is the She Center, and you can probably find anything you need from us.
Okay, so audience, go check that out. And anyways, those who are listening on YouTube or Spotify, please give a like or give a rating on Spotify or Apple to help this podcast. And please feel free to share, to subscribe, all that cool stuff, so that other people may also discover the awesome truth that heals that was given to us today by our guest, Lydia Knight. And Lydia, again, thank you so much for being a guest on the Truth That Heals podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for spreading truth. I appreciate you.